Hello and welcome back to the We Are City channel, and today we're going to be reviewing the transfer window with a very special guest. Like I've said, the king of the transfer Manchester City news is JSGC. Thank you for coming on.
Hello, no problem.
I thought to start with the players we have sold.
Yeah.
The likes of Jesus, Sterling, Zinchenko, big players really for the squad. We've sold them now. Do you think that's going to hamper the first team?
I think as the season goes on, potentially. I think of all the ones you've just mentioned there, I'd probably say Gabriel Jesus is probably the strongest depth that we had when it came to our squad. And I think as we start to move towards playing every 3 to 4 days, week after week after week, particularly once we get back after the World Cup, I think squad rotation will be key, and having quality like Gabriel Jesus really just helps us just be able to rest some important legs when it gets towards the really important game. So I think he'll be a pretty big loss for us. Zinchenko, I think his personality, his go-to attitude is probably what's going to be missed most about Alexander Zinchenko. And Raheem Sterling, I'm not sure. I'm going to probably just sit on the fence with Raheem Sterling. I'm just going to say that I think he's just a player that has a habit of popping up at the right place at the right time. I mean, his judgment to read positions and play has always been pretty pivotal for us. However, he's always been a big question mark over his finishing. I wouldn't describe Sterling's exit from City as being the smoothest, particularly when it comes to his relationship with the fans and the things that have been said and the things that have been done. However, I do still hold high esteem on Raheem Sterling. I think he'll be a pretty big loss to our squad, but we've brought in Erling Haaland, so I think the loss there, particularly in attack, we keep him match fit, isn't probably going to be felt that much. And we've also got Julian Alvarez brought in as well from Argentina, which will help as well. And he's looked very positive when playing for us. So, it's important that these squad rotated players now get regular first team minutes, which I reckon all three of the names mentioned probably are going to go and get that at their clubs. And they've all got really good moves to top Premier League clubs as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they adapt and how they do at other clubs away from Manchester City. As I think it's important that we start to focus elsewhere on the players that we do have, the players that do want to be here, that aren't going to let their contracts run down, make it all about them and look towards the potential next generation of other players. I think this is a really important time now, particularly in attack, for players like Phil Foden to push on and get to that next level. We brought in Grealish last summer, try and get him to that next level as well. And that can only happen through the exits of players that don't want to be here, which ultimately has come down to Jesus and Raheem Sterling. So it is what it is.
I think with Sterling, the thing is with Sterling, I think like City fans' biggest issue with it is the fact that he's gone to Chelsea. I think if he'd gone anywhere else, would have gone, you know what, he's wanted to go and he's not been good for so long. I think it's that worry that we know the level Sterling can be and what he does bring to a team. I mean, the City squad, I do think perhaps lacks that sort of a runner pacing behind. I know Haaland's brought that, but Haaland might be the only one running on his own at the moment. There's no one really with him. I think Sterling going to Chelsea, do you think that's going to come back and bite City a little bit, or do you think he's not going to be the player he has been in the past?
It'll be very interesting when we do play Chelsea, how he does. He has pace to get in and around, like you said, and he's a player that will be very direct. And when we've got players that have got pace playing against our high defensive line, then there's always going to be space behind. And I think Raheem Sterling is a player that can exploit that. And I think he's probably going to be having a little bit of an edge with a little bit of a point to prove, not necessarily to Manchester City, not necessarily to the fans, and probably not even necessarily to the coaching staff and Pep Guardiola, but more just a personal thing for himself to showcase, actually, I do have it and I can do it. So I can see him really playing up. What I think will be interesting is if he does grab a goal against us, will he celebrate or not? That's a big question there.
I think he will. I'm certain he will.
I reckon he will as well. And to be fair, why wouldn't he? You don't, when you sign for Manchester City, it's not a lifetime contract. It's not a lifetime commitment. Whilst he was at Manchester City, he was a dedicated professional. He did his job. He did his job very well. He's helped us to have some very successful years. And when he leaves, we've got some good amount of money here. So wish him all the best. And when he does come up against us, it's up to the Man City defence to make sure he doesn't get through. And it's up to Edison to make sure the ball doesn't find the back of the net. And if it does, then make sure we go and score a couple more, make sure that we beat Chelsea.
Not just Sterling with Jesus and Zinchenko going. I think City will miss Jesus, but with the addition of Haaland and Alvarez, I think that is sort of covered. I think my one is obviously the left back situation. Zinchenko, I think, is the biggest miss to the squad. Not only because his personality, just purely because he's a left back and he's not even a natural left back. And now we're kind of lacking in the left back again. I know I spoke to you a while about doing this video, and then I said we'll see how the Cucurella situation plays out. It's not played out in the way I was expecting it to. I was assuming we'd be sat here saying, "Oh, City have signed Cucurella, obviously for 63 million to Chelsea." There's a reason City pulled out that deal, and a clear reason. Instead, City have signed Sergio Gomez from Anderlecht. I don't know if you've seen much of him. I personally haven't seen much of him. I saw a bit when he played for Huesca, and he played as a midfielder. So him at a left back, it feels like perhaps another Zinchenko situation where when he plays bad, we're going to be saying, well, he's not a left back anyway. Not really a situation City want to be in. And again, Cancelo, he's not a left back either.
I think Zinchenko's is a loss to the squad. He's very good with his feet. He's versatile, obviously, to the squad, and he's always done a very good job when asked to play literally anywhere on the pitch. And it just so happened that there's a hole at left back that now that we've let Zinchenko go, that hole is still there. And I think the club's taken a big gamble on Marc Cucurella in anticipating that with Zinchenko leaving, it gives us the funds to pay for Cucurella. And once we've started to get through the negotiations, I think the club have seen actually it's not a case of 40 to 50 million pounds, which is what I've been reported on for a good couple of weeks in July, in saying it's 40 to 50 million pounds. The closer City get to 50 million pounds, the more likely Brighton are to say yes. And it turns out that 50 million pounds wasn't even cutting it, so City have had to cut the losses and settle for Sergio Gomez instead for a smaller price. Now, what I did find quite interesting for the last week or so, they've been saying that we're after two left backs, a development player in the form of Sergio Gomez, a player that's probably going to need a good couple of seasons at the very least to be able to adapt and become a full natural left back for Manchester City, who he seems like Zinchenko's replacement. He's good with his feet. He's versatile. You ask him to play anywhere on the pitch, I'm sure he'd be happy to do that. So that box is ticked. However, I do just fear that should there be a serious injury to João Cancelo, and touch wood, that doesn't happen, then all of a sudden, in terms of senior, experienced left backs, we're looking very short. Now, we do have plenty of options. Ake can cover at left back. He's done a very good job towards the latter parts of last season there. Laporte's a left-sided centre-back who I'm sure will be more than happy to play at left back if we need to. We've got Joshua Wilson-Esperand as well. And we've got Sergio Gomez too. So there's plenty of options there. It's just without João Cancelo there, it does look slightly weaker than everywhere else. And what's going to be very interesting about this season is I'm expecting to see Pep Guardiola do a lot of tinkering around. And I wouldn't rule out, should there be an injury to João Cancelo, or he needs a rest or to be rotated, perhaps a little tinker with the formation and going with a flat back three with three centre backs and having Ake or Laporte cover as that left-sided centre-back, and then getting some minutes for someone like John Stones to sit right in the middle of that pack, who Stones is a versatile as well. He can cover at defensive midfield, can't he, too? So there's lots of different options that I'm sure Pep will be exploring throughout the season. Would have been ideal to have had these players available for selection during pre-season to let them gel and start testing out some different formations, but we don't play many pre-season games, so it wouldn't have been too much of a benefit to us, but it'd have been nice to have seen.
Yeah, definitely. And some of the other sales as well, so I've not the main squad, but the backup squad as well. You've seen, some of the youth players like Lavia. I had never expected him to move in a permanent deal, but we got good money for him. Bazunu's left in a permanent deal as well. Do you think sort of a change in transfer policy for City? That the sort of idea as well with the Cucurella was, we'll sell before we buy. And now we've decided, you know what, we'll let the youth players go out on permanent deals, let them play and just buy them back in the future. Is that the sort of policy you think is going to work, or do you think it might shoot us in the foot a little bit when trying to bring the players back?
Well, we've become net spend kings for this year, haven't we? It's very difficult when managing young players. I think you've got to be really ruthless, and you've got to ask the question of, is this player good enough to get into the starting 11? Is this player good enough, if they get into the starting 11, to cement their place? And you've just got to be ruthless. And unless you're at the very top end, high quality young player, I think 9 times out of 10, maybe even 99 times out of 100, that answer is going to be no. at that point in their career. There's nothing to say that in 3-4 years' time, there's no reason why players like Romeo Lavia couldn't be right up there as one of the best holding midfielders in the Premier League. City have got themselves an affordable buyback that they can bring him back in. And I think that's great management from City. It's good because these are homegrown players, not just in England, but by the club as well, which is great for our Champions League quota because we've got that quota to meet. But it's also brilliant to be able to bring these young players back to the club who have raised them. And these players, these are high quality, top quality young players. They're just not at the level where City are, which is winning Premier Leagues and winning Champions League. But it doesn't mean they're not Premier League players. And I think Bazunu and Lavia are two players that I expect in the next 2 seasons with regular Premier League minutes with them are going to develop and they're going to get even better. And I think then if there is to become positions available in the squad, should Edison leave or should Rodri leave or something was to happen and City were to have a look at options, then these players could be options there for City. We've had this with Douglas Luiz before, haven't we? We sold him to Villa and we had that decision to make where do we sign him now because we've got that option, or do we say, no, actually, we'll let him spread his wings elsewhere and let him become who he wants to be at another club. And at the end of the day, what City and the coaches will want for the players is for them to be the best that they can be. Whether that's at Manchester City or not, that's a different question. And there's no problem if it is at City or if it isn't at City. It's all about development and how they improve as a player. And that, at the end of the day, is players' welfare, and that's their choice to make and the club to agree with. And thankfully, City, when it comes to their transfer policies, seem very accepting. We've seen that with the Bernardo Silva situation. Should Bernardo just said, I want to leave, City would have been more than happy to let him leave for the right price. We're not holding players to ransom. We're not saying, you must stay here. You've got to, you've got an obligation with your contract to stay here. City have been very accepting, saying, if you want to leave, you can leave as long as it is for the right price. And that's okay. We'll look at other players and we'll bring them in. It's a business at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And City, do, like you said, net spend kings at the moment. We're doing it the right way. I'm thinking we haven't really bought anyone back, have we, before then? Maybe Angelino, and that didn't work out so much anyway. We've never really sold someone and bought him back. Yeah, I thought he was really good. I liked him in the youth team for years. And then when he'd gone, I thought, surely he's going to come back. And when I was excited, I think many City fans were excited. We're bringing back a youth player, and he's one that's worked out by letting him go and bring him back. And then just never saw him. He never really got his chance. I think that was the main thing, wasn't it?
He was just never really suited the system, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think the price that we had available and the obvious quality that he had, I think, was to be explored by City. And there's only one way to find out if the player is going to be a right fit, and that's to try them. If you try them, it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and you do the same as what's happened before. You let them go and see where they can end up at another club, because there's nothing to say that if you're not at City, you can't be successful. Of course, I'm sure players will want to be at Manchester City. They'll want to win all the big trophies, but sometimes it's all about playing regular first-team football and having that opportunity to be able to excel, and that could be at another club.
In terms of bringing players in, I think there's one place to start. That's got to be Erling Haaland. He is like the main one this summer, isn't he? The one that I honestly, before he got announced, for a long time, I thought it's not going to happen. He's going to Real Madrid. I sort of thought the hope is what kills you, isn't it? I didn't want to get crushed. I thought, you know what? He's going to Real Madrid. I'll accept he's going to Real Madrid. And then the fact that he came to City was, I think for me, just such a shock that it had happened. And even now, seeing him play, when he goes to the stadium last weekend's Bournemouth, to see him on the pitch for City, I just don't believe it. What a signing could he be for City? Could he be the heir to Sergio Aguero? We assume so, don't we?
If he stays here long enough, I'd be very surprised if he stays injury-free, if he won't overtake Aguero's goal records, because Haaland's just an incredible player. It doesn't really need any introduction to Manchester City. And as you said, there was Real Madrid after him. There was interest from Bayern Munich at one stage. Manchester United, Liverpool's name were being chucked out there. PSG's name was out there. Barcelona were interested. So Man City managed to fight off interest from all the top European clubs to bring in one of, if not the hottest prospect out there into our football club in a position that we've been crying out for 12 months. And I think we've done so well to get such a good deal here for Erling Haaland. So I'm really excited to see just what he can do for Manchester City. I do think he's going to take a couple of seasons to adapt. I don't think Pep Guardiola's system is the strongest of systems right now to suit Haaland. And I think he's going to have to adapt. And once he does adapt, and he learns when he needs to make the runs, when he needs to drop deep, when he might need to drift out wide to pick up the ball, or when he needs to maybe track back. Once he gets all that into his game and he gets used to the system, and that can take a year or two, I think he'll become, as an overall player, much better. But Haaland's, to me, he's been brought in to do one job for Manchester City, and that's to score goals. He knows where the back of the net is. So I'm excited to see just how many goals he's going to score for City. He's already got a couple of goals to his name against West Ham. And I think any Premier League team out there that's thinking they're going to go over slightly higher line against us, and they're going to risk the passes coming in from players like De Bruyne, and they're going to give Haaland a good yard of space, he's going to punish them. So I can see him scoring a lot of goals. I can see him getting very frustrated in other games as well, where he's not given that space, where teams are looking to have 3 or 4 players around him to try and kind of suffocate him out of the game. And I think he's going to get frustrated by that. I think once defenders start to learn what Haaland's strengths and weaknesses are, that's when he's going to need to step up his game and look to improve. And that, to me, is what will defy Erling Haaland as to whether he's going to reach the levels of Aguero, because Aguero could adapt to the Premier League. He could find them little pockets of space, and ultimately just a brilliant football player who knew where the back of the net was. And Haaland's got everything in there in his arsenal to be able to make that at Manchester City and to be a successful Premier League striker. And the fact that we've managed to grab him for just over £50 million, to me, is a remarkable bit of business from the club. To me, it's the best signing that's been made by any Premier League club this summer.
Yeah, definitely. When you look at, like, last summer, we could have been signing Harry Kane for 120 million. You signed Haaland for less than half that. You think it's a no-brainer, really. I'm so glad. I mean, last season I was a bit. We should have got Kane. We've missed out on a top player there. But now I just think, well, it was worth it. It was worth missing out on Kane for the longevity we've got in another striker. Like I said, it is if he stays for how long. We don't know how long he's going to stay. That is sort of the only question with Haaland. But just what a signing. And I think, like you're saying about, teams not playing the high line. We saw against Bournemouth, they play the deep line. Maybe Haaland mainly struggled himself to get into the game. But with Haaland in that game, I feel like he occupied the Bournemouth defence that allowed De Bruyne and Gundogan and Grealish and Foden, the other players, to pick up the space then to get the chances. So I don't mind him being quiet. I know he only completed 2 passes in that game. I don't care, because he gave the space to all the other players. And I suppose if we have a game where Haaland's struggling, that's fine, because we can take him off and bring on another signing who is probably more suited to that sort of game in Julian Alvarez. What a pickup. And whoever scouted him out has picked a real top player, haven't they? And probably the closest in the ball to maybe Sergio Aguero, in the sense of the way they can get around and link up with play. And I think, how do you feel about Alvarez coming in as well as Haaland? Last season, we didn't have any strikers. This season, we've got 2 of probably the best young strikers in Europe.
I'm excited to see Alvarez. He reminds me more so than Haaland of Sergio Aguero. Yeah. His near post finishing was very good for River Plate. Yeah. He was one of them players that once he's in the mood and he's grabbed a goal or 2, he's more than capable of going out there and scoring 3, 4, 5 goals. And that's just in a game. He has done it for River Plate. So I'm excited to see just what he can do for City. I do think Alvarez is going to have to be patient when it comes to getting minutes at City. It might just be he gets a start in a couple of Premier League games, whereas he might have to sit out a Champions League game. And that's okay. It's a learning curve. It's a development stage for him right now, and he can only get better. But I reckon over the next 12 months or so, I think we're really going to see Alvarez come into his own. And I can see him being very successful for Manchester City. He's one of them players, he really likes to work hard. We've not seen all that much of him, but what I have seen is a player that's got a real can-do attitude, who wants to be there, who wants to impress. And so if he listens to all the coaches with his natural ability as well, then it just goes hand in hand to make him a fantastic signing for Manchester City and a brilliant attacker for the Premier League as well. So I'm excited to see just how well he can do.
He's got that sort of Gabriel Jesus work rate about him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I've seen him play, he just hunts the ball all the time. And I think Haaland's a bit different. I think Haaland will get used to that, but I don't think he's quite got the energy. And plus, I'd rather he reserve his energy for scoring the goals, really, rather than running around chasing, where Alvarez just seems to be full of energy. And just when he came on against Bournemouth, he were running and running. And I suppose, in a way, he forces that goal, doesn't he, against Bournemouth? By being there, Lerma scores that own goal. If Alvarez wasn't there, that maybe he could have, a bit more comfortable to clear it away. He couldn't do it. Alvarez right on him. And I think City's transfer window, I'm really happy with the transfer window, really. Another player we've got to talk about is Calvin Phillips as well. Came in to sort of replace Fernandinho, really, in that role as a backup. Although I do think we could see him more playing as a number 8, possibly at times, alongside Rodri. Do you think Calvin Phillips is a good pickup? I know I've spoken to some people. They're not the biggest fan of him. Personally, I'm not overexcited by Calvin Phillips. I think he's a good backup player. For his price, I think we actually got a good deal, considering he's English. They're usually more expensive. I know in City we're first getting linked with him. I hadn't seen too much of him. I'd seen him and thought, yeah, he's a decent player. England played Hungary. Now, I have a lot of Hungarian family on my partner's side, and they were all, watching the game against Hungary, and Calvin Phillips was shocking in that game where they lost 4-0. And I watched that, and they were saying to me, he's terrible. And I was like, yeah, by the way, he's linked with City. He could be signing for City. I'm a little bit worried now watching him play in this game. Do you think he's going to be, do you think he's going to be a really good player for City? Or do you think he's just going to be one of those players that gets a game every now and again, comes and does a bit of a job, but never really will play that much for us?
I think the biggest fear you have when you're signing a squad player, and that is what Calvin Phillips has been signed for at this moment in time, is for him to be a squad player. And I think the fear you always have is when you're bringing in homegrown talent, is you're thinking to yourself, I really hope he's not going to be the next Jack Rodwell here, who's got heaps and heaps of potential, but never actually hits the heights. And then give it a couple of seasons, it hasn't worked, and then he just ends up playing lower down into the Premier League and dropping down into the Championship, and then just, his confidence is shot, and he ends up kind of ruining his career, I think, is the negative way to look at it. But what I like to think is, just have a look at when we signed Nathan Ake. He was signed for the exact same reason. His job was to be a squad player for Manchester City. He's not going to replace Aymeric Laporte. He's not going to be able to take his spot away from him, but he is going to get given minutes. And when he does get given minutes, he needs to take that opportunity with both hands. And it's taken a couple of seasons there, but Nathan Ake, to me right now, is one of, if not City's best defender that we've got right now. He is incredibly consistent. And I was speaking to some Bournemouth fans before the game when I was doing a preview for one of their fan channels, and we were speaking about just how good Nathan Ake was. They were saying that he's the best player that Bournemouth have ever seen, and they're happy that he's managed to come to Manchester City and not be a failure, but to be able to show that case that he is a brilliant football player, and he's reaping the rewards because of that. And that's what I'd be saying to Calvin Phillips as well. I'd say forget about that Hungary display that he did. Forget about the things that have happened in the summer when playing for England, because quite frankly, quite a few of them England players put in horrendous performances over the summer. I think John Stones serves from memory. I don't think he had a very good game.
Yeah, he was terrible in that game as well.
but he's an awesome player, and we know that he's an awesome player. So it's all about when Phillips does get given his opportunity at City, can he grab that with both hands? Whether that's going to be him playing to be rotated with Rodri, or whether he's going to be playing alongside Rodri. I've got a feeling we're going to be seeing a little bit more of Calvin Phillips taking on that position alongside Rodri rather than rotating with him, mainly because Rodri's incredibly fit. He doesn't have many injuries throughout the season, and he just seems so comfortable. You can ask him to play 50 plus games, and I'm convinced that he'd be able to do that. And so to be able to rotate with him is very difficult. So Calvin Phillips will be wondering, where am I going to get the minutes? Well, Ilkay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, Kevin De Bruyne, there's 3 players there, 2 spots in the midfield that's going to be rotated, and that's where Phillips is going to come in handy. And when he does get given that opportunity, he's got world-class players ahead of him. So it's not going to be easy. Wasn't easy for Nathan Ake either when he's got players like John Stones and Aymeric Laporte ahead of him. Yet he's managed to get himself into the squad. So that's the level that Calvin Phillips needs to hit. I think he knows that from when he's joined Manchester City. Obviously believes in his own ability. It's a great move for him. So I'm excited to see what he can do. And I saw earlier on Twitter that he's back in training, so we could well see
I was going to say his injury.
Newcastle.
Yeah, his injury history is a bit of a worry as well, I think, for some people, isn't it?
Always. Erling Haaland's injury records
Yeah.
aren't brilliant either.
No, that's it. There's too many of them. As soon as they get linked with City as well, that's it. They start getting injured as well. I think you're quite right there, and it's interesting to say Phillips could take a similar route to Nathan Ake, and with Ake, it's taken him quite a few seasons, like 2 seasons, his third season now, to really get his chance. And it's funny, I know I was a bit uncertain on Ake, and he looked shaking, especially if you remember. I think was it his debut against Leicester where we lost 5-2, and I thought, oh, we've not signed a good player. He does not look it at all. But when he's got like actual competent players around him, and not an actual decent left back and Cancelo, whoever it is alongside him, Ake's looked really good. And last season he was one of the players I thought was most impressive for City. I really did. The clearances against Arsenal and things like that. You think they're key moments in the season. So perhaps Phillips might take him a while, Calvin Phillips, maybe 2 or 3 seasons. But by then we know that as soon as he steps into the team, he's just going to give us a solid 8 out of 10 performance every single time, because I think that's what Ake is now.
Consistency's key, isn't it?
Yeah, massive. That is massive, isn't it? I think that was my problem with Sané, thinking of a former player. I thought Sané was fantastic, but you didn't know whether it was going to be a 10 out of 10 game or a 5 out of 10 game. You just weren't sure. And I think with like players like Ake and De Bruyne, I used to always talk to people. Someone who was always telling me about Paul Pogba. They were saying how good Pogba is. He's better. He's a better player than De Bruyne on his day, they were saying. And it was like, but De Bruyne does it maybe 7 out of 10 games. Pogba does it 1 in 20. And that's what separates the top players from the ones that have got they've got quality on the day, but it doesn't matter about on the day. You've got to do it consistently.
Yeah. Well, consistency is key. I think that's the route to the City first team squad for any player. You must be consistent. You're consistent, you'll get them minutes.
Stefan Ortega, who is sort of the most unexpected signings, I think. If any City fans said they'd heard of him before he got linked with City, I think they'd probably be lying, because no one had. But I tell you what, he looks quite a good goalkeeper, and he looks really suited to what we want. And against Bournemouth, before the game, they were warming up. I think he only conceded about 2 shots in the warm-up when I was watching the players take shots at him. And he was really trying. I think he's definitely the guy to push Ederson. I know Ederson last season didn't have the best of seasons. I was really disappointed with Ederson last season, because he's one of my favourite players in the City team. And I thought last season, Ederson, he was conceding way too many chances. He was just making silly mistakes at times. And Ortega perhaps is the man to really push Ederson to the level we know he can be again, because Ortega, if Ederson drops, Ortega's in there straight away. And he's good with the ball at his feet. He's a good shot stopper. He's exactly what we want.
He might just be, in the long run, one of the biggest bargains that we've managed to pick up. Now, the first thing, so when I was following this transfer, and I couldn't believe it, they were saying Zach Stefan out and bringing in this guy from Germany, and I was like, why are we doing that? Because even though he put in a shocking performance against Liverpool in the Cup semi-final, I still rated and still do rate Zach Stefan. But it's become very clear that he wants regular first team football, and he wants to be the #1 goalkeeper for the United States of America for the upcoming Winter World Cup. And so because of that, he needs to leave Manchester City. So once I'd accepted that, I was like, right, okay, what do we go for? Because you don't want to bring in a goalkeeper who's world class, because you're just going to end up with a very unhappy goalkeeper in either the new signing or Ederson. So you want somebody that's going to come in and give Ederson that kick, because he didn't have, to me anyway, last season, the best of seasons. He still managed to pick up the Golden Glove, which is a showcase of how brilliant Manchester City are, yet there were still areas that could definitely be developed with Ederson, and he needed somebody that was really going to be on his back, whether that be in a supportive route, which I'm sure Ortega will be, or whether that was to be somebody who's literally breathing down his neck and saying, if you don't put in a quality performance, I'm going to take your spot in the team. And I think that's exactly what Ortega brings to City, because he's an excellent shot stopper. Had a great season in the Bundesliga when it comes to saving shots. He's good with his feet as well. And so that, to me, we've got a really nice little balance when it comes to having a #1 and a #2 at Manchester City. So I'm hoping that's going to push Ederson to that next level. And I wouldn't be too concerned about Ortega with him not having regular first team minutes, because he is going to get minutes. It might come in the Carabao Cup, where if City have a friendlier draw to us than what we've had in other competitions, then he's going to get lots of minutes for City and potentially help us to win a major trophy. And the same is going to be said when it comes to playing in the FA Cup, and it's going to be potentially get some minutes in the Champions League if we manage to progress early, and any injuries to Ederson, and he's there to get regular minutes as well. So to me, we've managed to pick up a quality goalkeeper for free, and he could well be a bargain in the long term for Manchester City. Now, the only other thing that I noted when I was following this transfer was Ortega seems very family orientated, but also just seems like a player that couldn't believe that Manchester City had made that phone call to him, that they wanted to bring him in. And he's gone from literally being a fish in a small pond to come into Manchester City. And he was just so excited. He was absolutely buzzing for this move. He's clearly put in a lot of groundwork. He's topped up on his English. His English, when he came over and did that interview on City's YouTube live stream, was second to none. It was perfect. Clearly been worked on, clearly been topped up, and he's showing everything that it takes to be successful at Manchester City. He wants to be here. He wants to be successful. And that attitude, to me, goes very far. And he's a talented goalkeeper as well, particularly with his shot stopping. So I think he's going to be a good goalkeeper. He's going to be a good signing for City. I'm excited to see him make his competitive debut for us.
Yeah, I genuinely do believe he could. If Ederson hadn't started to slip again, I genuinely do believe he could have that chance of starting. I mean, I have some family in Germany. They came over a few weeks ago. And they don't really watch football, but I just sort of put his name out there just to see if they knew anything about him, because I in the Bundesliga, I'd never seen him play. And they said to me, they don't know much about him, but from what they know from people they'd spoke to who are really into football, the fans of the Bundesliga have said he's someone that Bielefeld, who he played for, they would have been relegated months and months ago if it wasn't for him. And that makes you think, then he must be some sort of top goalkeeper to have that sort of impact on a club. I think, you know what, we might, like you said, we might have just picked up a real bargain there. Someone who's just sort of unexpectedly that good to play for a team that isn't good and just happened to be out of contract. They were happened to be relegated. It sounds like there's a lot of Bundesliga clubs scrambling over him. And City, the big name, said, listen, we can give you a chance here. And he's gone, you know what? He's got the personality. He's got the drive to give it a go. I'm really interested. I think that perhaps of all the transfers, that could be our most interesting signing.
It's very interesting. I think it's just a phone call gets made to him, and I think he's taken aback by it, because you have to be, because you go from playing towards relegation spots in the Bundesliga to saying Manchester City, this team that wants to win the Champions League, that won the Premier League, they want you. They want you to play for their team. And if you're a player that, unless you're playing at a very high level for a very top club, when a club like City comes calling, you listen. And that's exactly what's happened here. And I can't wait to see what he can do. I really am. I'm excited.
How important is keeping Bernardo Silva? Of all the signs we've made, how important is it that we, there's still a few weeks left yet, so it's still uncertain, but how important is keeping Bernardo Silva? Is that maybe one of the biggest signs we've made, really, by keeping him?
I was speaking on my transfer update yesterday about it, and I'd put out a tweet about it too. And if we keep hold of Bernardo Silva, that's huge. It was huge last summer when we managed to keep hold of him, and it's huge again this summer if we can keep hold of him, because if we let him leave this late into the window, he's not going to be replaced. And to me, that's scandalous. He is an amazing football player. In terms of midfielders that I want at Manchester City, other than Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, he's the player. There is nobody else out there, in my opinion, that's better than Bernardo Silva at what he does in terms of his technical ability, his willingness to drop deep, to help the team out, and be able to move City from defence into attack, and also to be able to track back and help City as well, should their teams want to be able to put us under pressure and try and attack us. There's just nobody else out there with the work rate and everything that he offers to the club. There's nobody else out there like him. So to me, to prize him away from Manchester City this late in the window it wouldn't even take a big offer. It'd have to be an incredible offer. And I am talking much, much more than the money figures that have been put out there of £80 million. I wouldn't accept a penny less than probably near enough double that amount, because that's how important he is. And I just don't think there's any club out there that's going to pay that kind of money. So I'd be surprised if Bernardo Silva did leave. And keeping hold of him is extremely important for the team, because we're weaker. We're much weaker, in my opinion, without him being here. So to keep him is big. What they're discussing right now is the potential of him signing a new contract. And I just put out on my tweet yesterday that not only if we keep hold of Bernardo Silva, but we managed to bag him on a new contract as well to commit in his long-term future here, to me is just as important as signing Erling Haaland. And I mean that because he's an awesome player, and it's showcasing that City are making their next step up in the transfer market. Not only are we attracting players to the club, we're attracting players to the club. We're fending off interest from some of the world's biggest clubs to keep them and stay at Manchester City. And that to me is so important. If we can do that, then that to me is as important as making a top new signing.
That's it. I mean, with Bernardo Silva, I think to me he's irreplaceable. You cannot find a player with his technical ability and work rate put together. I know some people saying Neymar to replace him, and I thought there's just no way, is there? It's just not the same sort of player at all. And I when we're linked with different people, I mean, Mateus Nunes, I think from Sporting, who's moved to Wolves, he was one that was mentioned quite a lot, and Lucas Paqueta from Lyon maybe, but I just, in any of those players, I cannot see what I see in Bernardo Silva. And I think City might have an issue next summer if, Gundogan's contract is up. I know it's looking likely, and perhaps at the moment he will sign a new deal, maybe, considering he's been given to the captaincy. But imagine going to next summer and having to replace Bernardo Silva and Ilkay Gundogan. A new contract for Bernardo makes it really important, because replacing both those, it leaves us with just De Bruyne as attacking midfielder, and that is it.
Difficult, very difficult. You almost get a sense with Ilkay Gundogan that he's been given the captaincy with in mind that they're going to get him tied down to a new deal, which I'm hoping that they will, because I think he's one of the most underappreciated players that we've got. He, like Calvin Phillips is right now, was a squad player at Manchester City. He's exceptionally good, and he's very adaptable too. So right now, to me, our squad is very strong, and we've sold some players. Sterling goes, Zinchenko goes, Jesus goes, and the squad depth starts to diminish a little bit because our squad is smaller. Yet when it comes down to pound for pound quality that we've got, it's still equally as strong as what it is now as what it was last season. And I think it's important that we keep hold of our squad, because to allow one or two more players to leave leaves our squad very, very small. And with the young players that have left as well, puts us in a little bit of a situation where we may need to go out there to spend big to replace these players. And to me, we're spending big for the sake of spending big when we've already got brilliant players like Gundogan and Bernardo Silva, where I'd rather we tied these down to new contracts than I would to let these players leave and bring somebody else in, because I just don't think there's anybody out there that's as good as them.
Yeah, definitely. And that comes to, well, the whole rounded everything up is, how do you rate the transfer window? Do you think City have addressed the issues we had? Do you think City's squad is deep enough for all the competitions? Do you think the squad is stronger than last season? How does it stand with you?
Good question. So I think we peaked very early in this window. If we'd have just done one bit of business this summer, and that was to sign Erling Haaland, and that was it, and get these players that had 1 year left on their contract, players like Riyad Mahrez, Gabriel Jesus, and Raheem Sterling, and get them onto new deals, then I would say it's a 10 out of 10 window. We had a brilliant squad last season. We've strengthened and made it even better by adding one of the best strikers in the world. That would be brilliant. But transfer windows in the summer, particularly with Manchester City, never that straightforward. And then once we've let these young players leave, we've let Sterling leave, we've let Jesus leave as well. To me, dips the window down from a 10 out of 10. We're probably looking at an 8 out of 10. We've managed to get a bit of quality in there. Happy with the signing of Ortega. Happy with the signing of Calvin Phillips to replace Fernandinho, whose contract was up and headed back to Brazil. And then also adding Sergio Gomez too has made it a decent window for City. So to me, I'd probably go with a 9 out of 10. The only reason I can't give it a 10 out of 10 is there's just a little hole there at left back. And we've brought in Sergio Gomez, who I'm sure is going to be quality. It is going to take him time. But the fact of the matter is City wanted Marc Cucurella. They wanted a senior left back to be brought into the club to finally address that problem. And whilst I'm happy that Gomez has signed, we haven't brought in that senior left back. And I think that might be something that maybe in 12 months' time we'll assess the situation again and see if we go after somebody else instead. But the fact was we wanted Cucurella. We haven't signed Cucurella, and we've had to settle for something else instead. It would be nice to go out there and see a couple more maybe of the young players be promoted to try and help with the squad depth. But it's very difficult because there's players out there that want regular first team minutes. There's players like Keiki that's just headed out on loan. Liam Delat's headed out on loan as well. So it's difficult because they want regular minutes. And then there's other young players that want to go out there and spread their wings elsewhere who are happy to leave on a permanent basis, which is what City have done. So for net spend, it's been brilliant for us. We've had a very good window as well. There's just that little teething problem with the left back, which caused me a little bit of concern, not major concern, just a little bit of concern. But it does give us something to get our teeth into next summer as well. So I'd go for a solid window for City and a 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I agree on that one. I think starting 11 wise, we're as stronger as if not stronger than last season. Yeah. But then when you start to look outside the squad, I think, like I said, left back is an issue. It's got to be an issue. And, you know, we know the club wanted Marc Cucurella. We know they wanted a senior left back, and we haven't got one. And that does make me worry a little bit. But other than that, I think everywhere else on the pitch, I feel like we're just as strong as last season. Maybe we might miss Sterling a little bit, and that sort of directness being that Grealish and Foden want to come in. I think that is my issue with the squad, really. Variety-wise, in the wide areas, we've got Walker who sort of plays this inverted fullback. We've got Cancelo who plays an inverted fullback. We've got Grealish who wants to play inside. Foden does. Mahrez does. There's no one who really wants to go outside. And I think at the moment, at the start of the season, I've looked at it and thought, I don't know why I'm worried, because at the moment everything's working great. But I think it might come to a point in the season where we face a team that's defending a certain way that we need width, and we just might not have it with the players we've got.
The season's very long. There's going to be times when we're going to be very frustrated. There's going to be times when certain situations in games don't go our way. There's going to be times where we're going to be pointing the finger and say, we should have kept hold of Sterling, where we should have signed somebody with pace to play out wide who can take the player on. There's going to be times where we're going to be saying we should have added a left back in. There's going to be times when players get injuries. But I think right now we're in a stronger position as what we can be in. And it's all about right now making sure we're preserving that energy for what is going to be a very long season. And I've got a feeling that this season's going to be decided upon what happens in the winter from the Winter World Cup and what condition our players come back to us, because a lot of our players are going out to Qatar, aren't they, for the World Cup. Some of our players, I'm hoping they're going to come back all in one piece and fit and ready to go. But as they come back is when we're just going to be hitting into our winter. And that's when we're going to start getting towards the busy periods of playing every 3 to 4 days. So it depends how far City get in the competitions. But we know what Pep's like. He takes every competition very seriously. So squad depth key. And we've not really got that depth. So touch wood, we can keep our players injury free. And a couple of our signings are a little bit injury prone as well. Doesn't help, but keeps us on our toes, so to speak, as fans.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming on.
No problem.
It's been great.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
I'll put a link in the description down below, and everyone who subscribes to our channel, go and subscribe to JSGC. He is the king of the transfers. He definitely is.